now we're continuing with the story of Ruth, and Ruth is a wonderful Bible character, how she makes the right choice. And just to recap, her mother-in-law Naomi is married to Elimelech, and she's got two sons called Malion and Chilion, and they make their way to Moab against God, saying, don't go to Moab. It was a heathen country where the people did not believe in God, and they made their journey to Moab. And through time, her husband died, and after her two sons get married, both of them died as well within a short period of time. So now Naomi is left with two daughters-in-law. One was called Orpah and one was called Ruth. And after 10 years in Moab, she decides to go back to Bethlehem. She hears that now the famine's gone, the people have got lots of crops, lots of bread to eat, the people are no longer starving. So she said, I'm now going to go back. And she hugs her daughters and tells them to go back to their families. Orpah did that. But Ruth said, Naomi, I'm not going back. I am staying with you because your God is my God and your people is my people. A lovely thing. She wanted to cling on to Naomi because of her God. And that's a wonderful thing. When you hear about God and all about the God of the Bible and His love for you and how much He loved you that He sent the Lord Jesus, you will want to cling to this God as well. There's nothing in this world that compares to the love and the relationship God has with His people. It's just wonderful. It's marvelous. It's living and it's real. And here Naomi, she said, Ruth, go. And Ruth said, I will not go. I'm holding on to you. I'm going back with you. And Naomi said, I have nothing for you. But she said, your people worship the living God. I want to worship Him as well. And that's what you've done. And here we can find in Bethlehem, the crops were bountiful, the harvest was happening, the barley harvest, the workers were out, and there was a special law. In harvest time, whenever the workers were out working, they had to deliberately leave some crops behind, so that whenever the poor people would come, they would be able to pick up enough for themselves to feed their families. That was a law so that everyone could be provided for. And whenever Naomi comes back, everyone recognized her. Naomi, is that you? You look different. She said, yeah, it is, Naomi. But she said, call me Mara, which means bitter. I went out plentiful with a husband and two sons. And now I've lost my husband, I've lost my sons. I've come back empty with sadness and broken heart. And now call me Mara, because I'm just full of bitterness because I've lost everything. And who's this woman with you? This is my daughter-in-law. He married one of my sons and she wants to come back and live with us because she's put her trust in God. And everyone said hello to Ruth. Then they went back home. And Naomi said, Ruth, there's a field and there's a law that the workers need to leave some food behind for poor people. We're poor, we've no money, we've no food. Take a basket and go along the ground and pick some pieces of corn and we'll make some bread, we'll have some food to eat. Otherwise, we'll die of starvation. And Boaz was the man who owned this field. Boaz, he noticed all the workers and he noticed this strange girl. And he went over to talk to her. And Ruth began to tell her story. She said, I've heard how you have cared for your mother-in-law. He said, I like that. And he told all the men, he said, do not talk to this girl. Don't touch her. He said to Ruth, every day don't bother looking for any other fields. You come into this field and I will especially leave you some food that you'll always have food for you and your mother-in-law. And whenever, as Boaz stood and talked to Ruth, he began to like her. As Ruth began to tell her story, how she left her home and left her family and left Moab and left her country because of her love for God, Boaz loved this story. And he loved the way she treated Naomi. Now, Boaz wasn't married. Ruth was a widow and she was entitled to remarry. And little did Boaz or Ruth realize that God was bringing these two people together. It was called providence, when God brings two people together so that His perfect will and His perfect plan can be done. And whenever that happens to you in your life, it's happened to me. Whenever I saw Joanna and Joanna saw me and we met together in Poland, Joanna was a believer and I knew nothing about it. And whenever I tried to witness to her, she said, but Colin, I'm already a believer. I couldn't believe it. And that's how God brought us together and we get married, just like Boaz and just like Ruth. And whenever Ruth went back home, and told her story. Naomi couldn't get over it. Ruth, do you realize Boaz, he's one of our relations. He's a kinsman. And you have a right as a widow to marry that man. So why did you go, if you like him and you feel you want to love him, why did you go and ask him to be your husband and to look after you? Do you want to know what happened? We're going to find out in the final chapter.